How's it going, fam? Welcome back to Erica's EDC, and today we are going to talk about the timeline of S30V all the way up to MagnaCut, and we are also going to touch on a little bit of carbide tear-out topic, okay? Not sure how that's going to go, highly debatable, but let's get into it. For some reason, a lot of my old videos featuring LC200N and MagnaCut and S30V, they're all like resurfacing and people are finding them again. Not sure why they are reintegrated into the algorithm, but they are. So I wanted to just kind of talk about S30V, S35VN, S45VN, and MagnaCut because they all kind of fell in line one after another. And they do have some similarities, but also some major differences. So because I've tested all of them and reviewed them, I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of each one. And I kind of want to talk about, you know, the chippiness of S30V because I think it's more like carbide tear-out. And, you know, like I said, people might not believe in that, but I do. So let's start with S30V here. So this steel, S30V, been around for a good amount of time. It was kind of like the go-to beginner's steel for a lot of companies. Basically, every entry level, even budget blade had S30V, and it was just kind of like the all-around starting point for a lot of knife companies. A lot of people had issues with it being chippy though, and unfortunately, I think especially with companies like Benchmade, it was typically like a burnt edge. I think a lot of production companies just send their knives out with burnt edges, and you have to really work through that fatigued steel to get down to the actual working steel. And people may not know that, you know, because it's not like you buy a knife and think that you have to put work into it right away. Like, people buy a knife, they expect it to be sharp and ready to go. And a lot of people, like average people, don't realize that when you buy a production knife, they are whizzing through those blades so quickly. They are putting edges on them on a belt or a wheel so quickly that they can be very fatigued, right? If you're moving at a high speed and everything is moving quickly and there's heat buildup, you can definitely have a really burnt edge. It can be, you know, weak, right? And it may chip on you when you go to use it. So S30V was used for a really long time for tons of production companies for their like entry-level blades, and people complained that it was chippy and that it was kind of difficult to sharpen as well. So we started seeing S35VN circulating through, and this is probably the one out of the lineup that people were least impressed with. I have tested S35 from a number of companies. I am not really impressed with it in terms of edge retention. Toughness, it seems great, but and you know, the sharpening process is very quick and easy. However, the edge retention just seems to be not really there. And this is one of those steels where it tends to glass out, which I've talked about really in depth on the channel. It's basically when you have a nice sharp edge, and then after a little while of using it, it will cut certain materials like food okay, but in terms of having that tooth and that front end sharpness, it's very quick to dissipate, and you're kind of cutting with a mix of geometry and, like, you know, whatever BTE you have and what's left of the apex. It kind of just like smooths out basically, and it doesn't have that bite anymore. And also, generally speaking, with especially S35VN, if you take it above like an 800 grit finish, again, it wants to glass out. Like, the moment you polish it, it just doesn't keep that tooth and that working edge for a very long time. So S35 was, in my opinion, pretty short-lived. We saw it, and then, you know, other than like with Chris Reeve, it kind of just jumped ship, and not a lot of people used it. I actually think Spyderco used S35 for like their exclusives with other companies and distributors. I don't even think they ran it as a baseline steel. It was kind of like the exclusive that they did with other people. So then we had S45VN come into play, and again, Chris Reeve is kind of leading the pack here of like the innovation with Crucible and working to build these steels over the years, right? Working with CPM, constantly just kind of revising here. So then we get the S45VN, and in my opinion, if we're looking at Chris Reeve as a company, the S45 was definitely a step up from the S35 that they were running, especially because a lot of the S35 that we got from them was pretty soft, like 59 to 60 HRC. So then when we got to the S45, we were seeing a little bit of a higher hardness, a little bit of a better heat treat. These were holding their edges better, still getting that great toughness, really easy to sharpen. All of these are pretty corrosion resistant as well. Like S35, pretty stainless. S30V, decently corrosion resistant. Not really. S30V is decently stainless. However, corrosion resistance not so much. So basically what I'm saying is, like, if this blade didn't have a coating on it and I cut fruit with it, the blade wouldn't really stain too bad. It wouldn't get like a patina too bad. But if I left those juices on there, it would rust. So, S30V kind of hit or miss with that. But the cool thing about S45 is that it's very stainless, it's very corrosion resistant, decent edge retention, great toughness, great edge stability, and very easy to sharpen. So this came through, and quite frankly, I don't think that if MagnaCut had hit the market when it did, I don't think that Chris Reeve would have strayed as quickly from S45 as they did, because they made the Sebenza 31s, they were made with S45, and then Laren made MagnaCut, and it was like, we just gotta, we just started this, but we're also finishing it because we gotta jump ship and get with the program here. New things are coming. So then we have MagnaCut come into play. And MagnaCut was really, again, kind of a spin on S45. And people don't really talk about that as much. People generally talk about MagnaCut and they're like, oh, it's a stainless crew wear. It's a stainless 4V, essentially. And that's what a lot of people talk about. But from my experience, it's pretty similar to S45VN in terms of just like how it performs. Easy to sharpen, pretty stainless. It's not completely stainless by any means. If you take MagnaCut and you put it in salt water for a couple hours, it's going to rust. End of story. That's just how it is. And it's not a completely stainless steel. It's just very, very stain resistant. But like I said, really easy to sharpen, super easy to deburr, very, very tough, great edge stability, kind of like the whole 9 yards. So now, well, not really anymore, but when it really initially came onto the market, MagnaCut was like the new craze, and everyone ditched everything they were doing for MagnaCut. So I just kind of want to explain which one out of all of these is my favorite and why. Also, sorry that I'm stuffy. My allergies are always horrendous at this time of year. Like, it just doesn't stop. S30V, compared to MagnaCut, MagnaCut wins all day. S30V is chippy, generally speaking, if you get it from a production company. And what I really think it is number one, burnt and fatigued edges from the factory, but also I really have experienced carbide tear out from S30V. A lot of people say that's not a real thing. In my opinion, it is, because I've literally experienced it. I have had carbide tear out on S30V blades, even 10 sharpenings into it. I really have. This is a steel where I have to be a little more careful of what I use in terms of my sharpening products. I have to be very careful because carbide tear out is real. That's all I can say. I'll make another dedicated video on that to go more in depth, but S30V, you just have to pay a little closer attention. With those diamond stones, lower grit, like 325 and lower, if you're going to use those, just be very, very careful. And same goes for if you're using any type of like ceramic stones that aren't appropriate, or like Nanawa stones, Shapton glass. You just have to be careful, because if you don't have kind of like the perfect material to make a new edge, it can chip, it can, you know, the burr can break off. It's just kind of finicky. So MagnaCut all day over S30V. We're talking about S35VN. I don't even really bother with it anymore because I just feel like it doesn't really have a place. There's nothing that this does that can outshine any of the newer steels. Like MagnaCut is 100% better than S35VN. This doesn't have any properties that blow my mind. It glasses out, like, yeah, it's easy to sharpen, so I guess if you want to have a field knife, go for it. But you can get way better edge retention and the same stainless properties and everything out of other knives. I just don't really see a point in it, so I don't really put my energy into it at all. MagnaCut wins that one. And then S45VN in MagnaCut. I think the S45 still has a place. I would like to see more custom makers using it. I know that MagnaCut blows through belts, can be a bitch to grind. It's expensive. That's one of the biggest things. It's just dang expensive. I would love to see more custom makers using S45VN. I think it's a decent steel. I think it still has a place. And, you know, while Chris Reeve used it, they did a great job with it, in my opinion. I think you have to run a little bit of a higher hardness, thinner geometry, and you're going to get the best qualities out of S45. But I think it still has a place, for sure. And then MagnaCut, you guys know I love it. I think it's, I know it can be tricky to work with, and I know that it's a bitch to grind, but it really is a very good steel in my opinion. I hope that nobody jumps ship from it because of the recent issues. But it definitely, it's a really good steel. I do think that Crewwear and 4V probably have a little more of a place in terms of production knives, just because I think that they're, well, Crewwear especially is easier to work with and, you know, can pretty much hang with MagnaCut. You see a lot of custom makers working with Crewwear because it has crazy good toughness, incredible edge retention, especially if you bring it up like above 63. A little bit easier to work with, a little bit cheaper. Z-Wear, same thing. So, you know, those are kind of comparable to MagnaCut. I really love this steel. I have it from a whole bunch of different companies and makers, and I really do think that the hype is real, because it's not hype, it's just genuine facts. Like, it's just a really good steel. But if you have interest in MagnaCut, or you've enjoyed it and you want to try things that are similar, definitely check out 4V, definitely check out Crewwear. I would say they're equally as good. Crewwear is a semi-stainless steel, so maybe get it like acid stone washed if you're worried about corrosion. Otherwise, if you like the patina and you like the aging, just leave it as be. It will patina over time for sure. And 4V is not stainless by any means. It doesn't rust very quickly, and it doesn't stain like super fast. Like, I've had 4V and it's totally fine. But, you know, definitely dry it off before you put it back in the sheath. Don't leave juices on it. It will pit, it will rust, but it has very good toughness and edge retention if you don't mind taking care of it. So, yeah, basically all in all, you know, I think that S30V is gonna kind of blow away in the wind soon, I guess you could say, because it just had some major flaws that are real. It's pretty finicky. Same with S35. There's just no, in my opinion, there's just no place for it anymore. So don't really bother with that. And then, you know, put your time and money into S45 and MagnaCut if you're looking for decent EDC steels or outdoor knives. But yeah, for some reason those videos have been popping up again on people's feeds. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick, because I know I used to use a lot of S30V and S35VN and stuff like that, and I just, with everything available now, I just wouldn't even bother with it. I don't want people thinking those videos that are coming up from 2 years ago are like still real life and relevant right now, because they're kind of not. I'm not going to delete them because I think they're educational, but they're 2 years ago, and I haven't made videos on them again for a reason. We have newer things that are much better. So that's today's video, guys. I have to go to work. I will see you on the next video. Go use your shit. learn how to sharpen your knives. You guys can't even see anything because it's not focusing. I'll see you guys on the next video. I love you so, so much, fam. Take care.